information or not information, and by that mean he orders and structures and determines the nature of the social system. And therefore, that kind of power that's given from which he gains his control cannot be freely given to any other people. It is not free for all comers. It means then that those who wield power in America and who will wield power in America must wrest control of this economic system from this person, the same way they wrest economic control from the Native Americans when they came here. Let me read you just a quick thing here, and our time is running. For these Negroes who believe in competition, capitalists are the most uncapitalistic people in the world. They do not believe in competition. They believe in destroying competition. They believe in creating what? Monopolies. They believe in gaining complete control. It's never been about free competition. It's been about power and control. Now let's look at what has been practiced here quickly in terms, and this comes from Theodore Cross's Black Power Imperative. I can't read them all here, but he lays out an interesting chart. He says for 300 years, the American colonies, the states and the federal government allotted untold billions of dollars of public wealth exclusively to members of the white race. And then they preached to Negroes that you're not supposed to ask for anything from the government. But ladies and gentlemen, the wealth that whites have today is the result of the government handing to them free land and free labor, by the way. Not competition, not people washing dishes and saving pennies and, buying this and that, but by people who use the government itself as a means of enriching themselves. In 1675, the Massachusetts Bay Colony seized plantation rights in 6 square-mile tracts to worthy individuals. The population of that colony included black slaves as well as free blacks. Neither were treated as worthy individuals eligible for land grants. The government was what? Giving away land. Maryland and Virginia in 1683 established 50-acre land grants to settlers who paid their own way across the Atlantic. Blacks were given a free ride in slave ships and thus were not eligible for grants. 1785, the federal ordinance of 1785 authorizes the sale of 640-acre tracts to settlers for $1 per acre. As slaves, blacks were legally prohibited from owning property. Where's your free market system, ladies and gentlemen? Where's your open market system that you have been taught to believe in? Why are you letting other people walk into your neighborhoods? Because you believe in some antiquated and never real economic ideology. Because you're not taught the real history of America and not gained the real knowledge of America. Because you see studying economic history and economics is a dull situation. You'd rather goose your neck in subway trains listening to music that hypnotizes you and drives you out of your mind. In 1850, the beginning of the massive federal land grant program for private railroad companies, outright awards of 130 million acres frequently include property for 20 miles on either side of road beds. Those lands later found to contain billions of dollars of petroleum and mineral reserves. Black businessmen never considered qualified to acquire, finance, or operate railroad franchises. This old General Grant that you think was a part of your liberation was president during the giveaway of millions and millions and millions of American acres to a handful of white men in terms of building the rails, giving away to one railroad as much as 158 million acres. And the government financing the development of the railroads, the government buying the bonds of the railroad and the whole bit and turning the wealth over to these white men. And they dare to talk to you about a free market and a free economy. Other railroads were given millions and millions of dollars. Learn the reality. To be truly Afrocentric, you must not only know your African history, but you must know American history, and you must know economic history the world over. It is not enough for you just to know about Africa, the history of Africa. You'll be deceived. You must know the reality of the situation. 1862, the Homestead Act grants settlers 160-acre tracts of federal land without charge. And they tell you the little few nickels you get from the federal government means that you're something decrepit. They're going to make you a workforce so you can work for nothing in pennies and create a third workforce to underemploy and unemploy other people in the name of workfare. Over 250 acres of public land transferred almost exclusively to whites in the most important land grant program in American history. Negro claimants blocked by lynch mobs, intimidation, and refusal of local authorities to protect their claims. But as you said, Brother Harris, we're willing to protect these other people. They got a right to be here. 1889, in the celebrated Oklahoma land rush, 150,000 white settlers scrambled to claim the choicest land. Savage lynchings, Ku Klux Klan terrorism, and Jim Crow legislation kept Negroes out. Later, the heirs and successors of white settlers were to discover billions of dollars of petroleum reserves on these lands. So, you know, they're rich because they're smart, right? They're rich because they stayed up nights burning the midnight oil. They're rich because they were living their dream. Yeah, you believe that. We can go on. I mean, there's so much here. But what's going on here? They're telling you about individualism. In every one of these acts, you will see what? Collectives of people. Not individuals. Collectives. Rings. Syndicates. Cartels. Groups. Not individuals. Groups of men. You will see the whole legislature passing laws in their favor. Men, women could even vote. Blacks could even vote. The legislatures of states and even the United States legislature itself was literally owned by the railroad, Jay Gould, Jim Fisk, you name them all, Rockefellers. That thief and dog literally owned almost every bit of oil in this country. Why? Because he broke the midnight oil? No, because he made all kinds of crooked deals. He priced his competitors right out of the market. He came in control of the refineries and manipulated prices. He used actual gangs and armies to destroy his competitors and to destroy people and to destroy labor. These men fought over the New York Central Railroad and the railroads going from here to Albany with fists and clubs and guns. Okay? And yet you think going to some college class where they're drawing price and equilibrium curves is going to get you some economic power in the world. And you think by keeping your nose clean and by being non-racial and non-ethnic, you're going to come and save yourself and get power in the world. You got another thought coming, and after a while you won't be able to think at all. Yes, you got to face the reality. You didn't make the world. It's a nasty, mean, dirty, low-down world. All right? And you're going to have to get in it and wrestle and get dirty with it. That's what it's about. Okay? But that's why they pump you with morality and churchism and spiritism. You see, so that you won't deal with the reality for what it is. In allocating places and opportunities according to race rather than merit, whites in the United States have used the full armory of coercive weapons commonly employed by the traditional combination of restraint of trade. No nation, what are you talking about, Japan, Germany, or any other nation, any other group of nations, has ever made it into the economic top echelon playing by the rules. None of them. None of them. They've always operated in terms of protecting their markets and getting a free ride on other people's markets. The Koreans are doing the same thing to you. The Arabs are doing the same thing. Whites have done the same thing and still doing the same thing. Every immigrant group comes in with the same strategy. Every immigrant nation do what? Protect their own and get a free ride on African Americans. That's what it's about. The United States defeated Britain and sent Britain into economic decline because the British, who were so arrogant about their manufacturing prowess, decided that they would throw their markets open and deal in free trade. And the United States for 150 years protected its own markets and protected its own industrialists with high tariffs and taxes, while it sold to Britain and while it sold to other nations in the world and grew to the point where it passed Britain in economic development. And Britain went into a decline for which it is yet to recover. And the Japanese are into the same game with the United States. And the Asians are into the same game with the United States. This is what the deal is about. If you see yourself as a nation, then you can see how the game is to be played. And then you learn the strategies by means of which it will be paid. But if you're just living your own individual dream, you'll never get it. And the dream is going to fall apart, just like Les Brown's dream fell apart. Yeah. He's going to learn that there's some other people dreaming besides you, buddy. And sometimes your dream clashes with theirs. Okay? Individual success is determined by the social structure in which they operate. Individuals cannot succeed by themselves. I do not care how much brain they have, determination they have, dreams they have. They must operate in an economic structure, a social structure that allows them to achieve their dreams. If that social and economic structure did not exist, they could dream all they want to. They will never get anywhere. In other words, then, individual success is social success. And individual success is created by a national or societal structure, not by individuals dreaming alone and pursuing their own self-interested dreams without regard to other individuals. But this is what we are told. We are told to do your own thing. Well, that's autoeroticism. Eroticism, isn't it? That's masturbation. Isn't that what that is? Yeah, do your own thing, you know. In other words, to do your own thing requires cooperation from some other folk. Yes. To even do your own thing as an individual requires what? Other people. Yes. You can't do your own thing by yourself. And so the most primal need of the human being for sexuality, for love, cannot be done totally by the individual themselves. They must enter into some kind of relationship with other people. One of the interesting things I find about individuals is they have an inherent tendency to form groups. You know, you think about it. We got so much here. But what we need here in the end, and what am I trying to say in the end? That your strength lies in your ethnicity. Your strength lies in your African consciousness. Consciousness is also an instrument of power. It's not just about knowing your African history or knowing yourself. Consciousness is the means by which an individual determines his or her behavior. You see? And the things used by consciousness, thinking, reasoning, information processing, and the values that are a part of that consciousness are the means by which the individual negotiates his way or her way in the world. You understand what I'm saying? It is through consciousness that you adapt to the world and adapt the world to yourself. And therefore, since consciousness guides behavior, since consciousness enables the individual to do various things, consciousness is an intelligence and consciousness is a power. The thing about consciousness, though, is that it can be socialized, meaning that consciousness that can be created by the nature of the interaction that the individual has with other people. And what has happened then is, in interacting with whites and Europeans, we have been inculcated with a Eurocentrically generated consciousness. And once that consciousness has been imposed upon us, and since it is an instrument of power, it means then that the Europeans have power over us through the consciousness that they created in us. You can then only escape from European power by developing an African-centered consciousness based on African-centered values, you see? Because if consciousness guides behavior, if values guide behavior, then if those values are your own, and if that consciousness is your own, then people with another consciousness and another set of values cannot control how you behave. Understand? That is why African-centered consciousness frightens them to death, because they recognize that their whole social order is built upon the consciousness that they have inculcated into African people, and is built upon the values which direct that consciousness. And that means then, if African people begin to follow the lead of African values and follow the lead of an African consciousness, the social order that is built upon their having a Eurocentric consciousness will collapse and fall apart. You must understand what this means. We got to do it here. I got to let you go. Maybe we'll finish this on another day. Thank you for your attention.
Hold it, we don't want you to go anywhere right now. Here you go, Mr. Banks. Professor Amos Wilson came out here in all his code and everything to give it his message, and he has a great project going on to see that this information is disseminated among African peoples everywhere, as is the African Nationalist Construction Movement. But we don't want him to leave here with no kind of money.
We didn't get